So here we are on day one, and I am giving you a few keys to success for this class. For this key, I'm going to say 85-15. So everybody goes, well, 85% tests is way bigger than the 15% formative. And that's not just homework, it's like quizzes and stuff. But here's the thing that people don't process. Duh, that's bigger than that, but if you just do a crappy job on the homework, and let's say almost nobody does no homework, but let's say that you only do some of the homework and you end up missing 10% because you only did like 1/3 of it. That means you did 5% of the homework, but you didn't do the other 10%. So you did 1/3 of the 15%, 1/3 of your homework. That means you lost 10%. That means you take your grade, whatever your grade was, and you drop it by 10%. And it's a big deal. Like if you had a B average and you had an 85% average and you drop it by 10%, now you went down to a 75. So don't tell me homework doesn't matter. It matters. It matters a lot. And I'm going to really encourage you to try to make your homework not drop your grade. Whatever your test grade is, make your homework at least keep it the same, or maybe even raise it a little bit. That will be amazing. But a ton of kids in here will probably slack on their homework, and then whatever their percent is, it'll drop some percent, some amount. And for a lot of kids, it drops them a whole grade. For some kids, it's only half a grade. And if you just do your homework, I mean, it often has the keys posted. Almost always, the key is posted for the homework. How hard is it to do your homework if you have the key? It's not that hard. It's just a little bit of effort. You got to actually take a minute and do it. And it's not going to be super long homework. Okay, the homework is not going to be like 2 hours of homework at night, not even 1 hour. Not probably for most of you won't even be a half hour. It'll be more like 20 minutes, sometimes only 10, sometimes 25, but an average of some number of minutes, maybe in the neighborhood of 20 minutes. And if you do that, then when tests come along, you won't need to study that much because you'll be fine. You'll have stayed caught up in the test. You won't have to get all stressed about the tests. A little bit of studying on test night is one of the keys. Because of course, at the last minute, if you can, usually our tests only have 12 questions. 8 easy ones and 4 hard ones, okay? But if there's 2 of those hard kind of questions, we'll have gone over every single one. We don't like surprise, there's a really hard concept, we'll have gone over all of them. But if there's 2 of the hard ones that you get wrong, now you're stuck with a B. And if you would have just struggled through that one thing, you probably know you don't really get it yet, and asked me about it, you can have an A. There will be a ton of kids that will be between a B and an A in here. That'll be back and forth where they'll get 2 of the hard ones wrong versus only 1 of the hard ones wrong. And that's the difference between a B and an A. Because most of you'll get most of the easy ones right. The easy ones are easy, right? So it's going to come down to those 4 hard questions. And if there's 2 that you don't get, if you just kind of leave it alone, you probably just get the B. If you could struggle a little bit on test night, that's that key. The next one is actually asking questions. So are you going to ask questions? I know my daughter is one of those super quiet people. She would never ask a question. There's some of you I will never get to ask a question. Some of you I will never hear your voice. Because you just won't ever say anything. And it's okay. There are different people. My daughter ended up being that super quiet kid. And she ended up going on to work at 3M. And at 3M, she was giving presentations to 300 engineers, standing in front of everybody. And she was the kid who would never talk in class. Okay, so you can change how you do things. She started out really quiet in high school, and now she's the big presenter up in front. Okay, so if you want to be super quiet, that's fine, but get your questions answered at least. Maybe you don't want to ask me in class, but maybe you're the kid who's going to go watch the video. I do record this, like we're recording right now, and we'll get into some math in a minute, and it'll be there for the kids that are absent today. All right, so that's another key to this class. Next key is to actually be here. If you're absent, I get it. There's going to be some times when you just get sick. I don't want you to come to school if you're sick, right? But I also know that there's times when it's a gray area where you could be like, well, I'm sick enough to stay home, but but maybe I'm not really that sick. I could go to school. There is a direct correlation. You should see the graph between the kids that are gone a lot and grades. If you're gone a lot, your grade suffers. It just does. It's just almost automatic. And it's so tempting sometimes to be like, oh, I just don't feel like I'm maybe quite up to going to school today. And if you don't, you end up, there's an automatic, the graph is just like this. The more days the kid misses, the lower their grade gets. It's just like a lock. So don't be that kid. So be here. Another key is just respect. And I'm going to respect you. I will not embarrass you in front of everybody. And I would love it if you would just be respectful to the kids around you and respectful to the teacher. And that's one of the keys, is just respect. And the last one is, this is not an easy class. It takes work. If you're willing to work, I could get anybody through this class. And if you're really willing to work hard, I can get anybody a good grade in this class. This is not the honors or the AP one where it's just like really hard. Okay, this is doable, but you do have to work at it. You are going to have to put in some work. And why is pre-calc different? Because typically you'll have, by later in the year, you're going to have 10 steps on a problem. Not like one step. Like here's a problem. 3x equals 12. That was what you did when you were in like 6th grade. You divide both sides by 3. And then you simplify it. What's 12 divided by 3? It's 4. See, that had one step, maybe 2 if you consider simplifying. How many steps do we have? It's seriously like 10 steps. It's like 10 steps before you get to the final answer. Okay, and you make a mistake on one of those steps, you're going to get it wrong. Okay, so that's why pre-calc is harder. It's just got a lot more steps. All right. So one of the things I'm going to try to do is teach you about your brain as well as the math I got to teach you. Here's one of the things you might not know about your brain. Did you know that your brain records where you learned anything? If you learned something, then your brain actually remembers where you learned it. It's kind of like this. If I took a picture right now, my Apple iPhone would be able to later call up the GPS coordinates of where I took that picture. Okay, it's geotagged. Back in the beginning of smartphones, a lot of people did not understand that. And so terrorists would take pictures of people and then post them to like Facebook, and people would be able to look at the geotag and know exactly where they took that picture. They could go and find exactly where they were because they didn't understand, because smartphones were new and maybe they weren't that smart in the first place, but they didn't know that there was a geotag on the picture. And there is on all pictures that are taken, unless you strip it out. And if you post something somewhere, it's at your house, then people know exactly where you live. Okay, so geotags are a thing. Number 2, geotags are a thing when it comes to where you learned something. How they figured this out was they took 2 classes and they had the kids either just stay in the same seats where they had always been and take the test in that same spot, or the other group, they shuffled them on the day they took the test and made the kids sit in a different seat. And they did statistically significantly worse if they tested in a different spot than where they learned it. It's because your brain knows where you learned it and it recalls it the best there. Another example I might use on this is to say, let's say that you are you're walking from one room to another because you need to go get a stapler or whatever, and you get into that room and you're like, dang it, what did I even come in here for? And you go back where you had the thought in the first place, and then you're like, oh yeah, I need the stapler. Because your brain has a geotag on even thoughts. All right, so I want to put you in the spot where you're going to learn your math this semester. It's not like if you have to move out chairs on the day that you take the test that you're going to fail your test, but you would do better if I could keep you in the same spots. So that's why I need to keep you, get you in those seats before I actually teach you any math, is because you'll remember it best there. And I just said the word best, and he appeared in the back of the room.
Do you leave the front row open on purpose?
I do, because a lot of times I'll have a kid say, Mr. Server, I read this story that said that kids do statistically significantly better if they're sitting in the front row, and I want to be in the front row. And so if I make my seating chart with empty spots here, when I have a kid go, oh, I really want to be in the front row, it's easy. I just go, boop.
So how do I request into the front row?
Excellent question.
Do I have to send an email?
When I have the kids, like I'm going to tell them in a second where their seats are, because right now this was self-selected, but right about now I'm going to tell them their seats, and then later this hour I'll be walking around and talking to people and finding out how to say your name right and all that, and then I'm hoping at that point you might go, Mr. Surratt actually should be in the front row. I've had kids before where they had a glass eye, and I couldn't tell. Like, I had no idea that I shouldn't seat them over there. I should seat them over there because I've had kids with hearing issues or vision issues that you can't tell. Good to see you, sir.
Awesome.
Take care.
Good work. Welcome back, everyone.
He's the best, everybody. Anyway, so I'll put you in your spots where you're going to learn. And then if it turns out that's not the best spot for you, you just tell me at the end of the hour today, and I'll move you to a different spot. And if it just want a front row spot, I do leave the front row open if I have room, which I do in this hour. So I'm going to move you, but don't get up. Don't get up, and I'll just tell everybody where you sit. I'll put the video back on in a second once I'm done putting the seats out there. Okay, so this is the next part where we actually do a little bit of math. What's this? We're actually going to do math on the first day? Yes. I think that the get to know you thing gets really old if you do it for 6 hours in a row, so I'm going to actually do a little bit of math. So would you get out a blank notability doc? You don't have to pull up notes or anything, just a blank one. Blank notability doc, and then put a smiley face on it, kind of like this. Just put a smiley face on it, and in a moment, when I feel like I think I have everybody, I'm going to ask you to turn your iPads my way so I can see how many people I'm waiting for. Let me give you an example of how that helps. If I say to turn your iPads my way, and I have two kids that are like, my computer's like updating right now, I can't do anything. Well, then at least I know, and then I can get them some scratch paper. You know what I mean? So that'll tell me if I've got everybody with me or not. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to spin your iPads around, and then I'll know who I need to bring scratch paper to. So while you were gone, we just had everybody take out their blank notability doc. All right, can you please turn your iPads my way? Is your iPad messed up? Or? Okay, you're sitting there, all right. In the back, can you turn your iPad my way? And then just, okay, good. Looks like yours is working. Okay.
Mine's still low.
Okay, here, perfect. You're the kid then that I needed this for. All right, so on that scratch paper, I'm going to just start off with something kind of easy. This is just basic algebra. Y equals 2x plus 8. Right there. So what we're going to start with in this class is going to involve graphing. And I want to remind you how that works. Okay, so this is an equation. I love to have a little bit of participation by like verbally, not just that you would write this down, but like if somebody would be willing to tell me, do you remember what the 2 is? What's that 2? Yes. That is the slope. Very good. You don't have to label this, but if you didn't know what it was, maybe you should. That's the slope. Take a second and write down what you think that is. Don't say it. Write it. I know some people know. I'm often going to refer to the research on this. I've done a lot of grad school classes, and I actually I read a lot too. And I'm going to try to tell you what I've learned. One of the things I've learned about your brain is that if you struggle with something for a minute first, before I tell you the answer, you will remember it better when you do get the answer. So if I just say, that's called the blah, it won't stick as well as if you go, what is that called again? It's almost like it's creating a space for it in your mind. And then if I tell you what it is, you'll be like, oh, categorize this. How many of you actually pretty sure you know it? Raise your hand if you're pretty sure you know it. All right, Spencer, what do you think?
Y-intercept.
That is correct. It's called the y-intercept. So if you were going to graph this puppy, make an xy axis like this. This is just kind of a rough sketch of it. The y-intercept would be 8. The y-axis is the one that goes up and down. So just put a spot here, and let's label it with an 8. You could put up 7 marks up to it if you want to. Okay, so that's the y-intercept, and the slope of 2 means you would rise over run, rise 2, run 1, rise 2, run 1, and you'd have this fairly steep line that's kind of like that rises 2 and runs over 1. That's just a basic review of how you would graph that. Now, graphing involves both the slope and the y-intercept and also points. If you're not good at it the way I just described it, you could get this graph by just graphing a bunch of points. Like if I said 2, 12 is on this graph, x, y chart. How could you have figured that out, that 2, 12 was on this graph? Well, you could take any number you want, like 2, and you'd stick it into the equation. So if I was going to stick the 2 in, where would I put it? Well, I put it under x, so apparently x is 2, so I'd put it here. And then 2 times 2 is 4 plus 8, y equals 4 plus 8, 4 plus 8, it is 12, isn't it? Awesome. Then tell me what I'd get if I put in a 3. Say I put a 3 in. You figure out what goes here. If I put in a 3 in my function, I'm going to rewrite it out because it got a little messy. Y equals 2x plus 8. I think the best way to teach variables is to think of them as an empty parentheses. You know why? There's actually a bunch of reasons that the parentheses actually matter. But I'm just going to say it's kind of like an empty spot where you can drop in any number you want, like 3. So this is 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 8, you're going to have to add in here. Like calculators aren't allowed on every test. You can't add 6 plus 8. It's fine to use your fingers and your toes if you want to, but you have to be able to add. Okay, so 6 plus 8 is, what is it? Say it if you know it. 14. Thank you. So 3 comma 14. Do you get how that's a point on the graph? I go over 3, up 14, put a dot, and that would be on the line. All right, so this is, I just taught you 2 of the basics from algebra that you're supposed to remember. And one of the ways that I like to start the year is by showing you, here's 20 of the most important algebra things. How many of you guys have had me as a teacher before? Raise your hand if you have. All right, so you guys will have a massive advantage at this point because you know the 20. I've showed you these before, but you'll have even forgotten them, I'm sure. Not all of them, but you'll have forgotten some of them. These algebra basics, these 20 things, are super, super important. Let me get this, help. I want to make sure you understand this about math. It's different than on other subjects. You could have had a year where you just didn't remember anything in social studies about, like, they taught you about World War II and you forgot all of it. And you could go on and learn about the Korean War and you could be fine. Didn't really have to know about World War II to be able to learn about the Korean War. Whereas if you don't remember algebra, how in the heck am I going to teach you Precalc? It all depends on the stuff we learned before. So if I'm going to teach you about complicated equations and you don't understand basic equations, how are you going to do that? You have to get your basics back under you. And I get, over the summer, people forget a lot. So this is the part where, this is not a test, this is just a worksheet. And it's such, I wanted to relieve tension about this worksheet so much that I actually put the answers on the backside. And they're even with the work, so you can see how to do it. The point is not to stump you on these. The point is to show you, here's some algebra you're supposed to know, and here's how to do it. And then I'm going to actually quiz you on it, maybe as soon as tomorrow. That's not going to go in the grade, don't worry, but it's about, do you really understand this? So if all you do is copy the backside of this thing, that's really going to be kind of sad. You want to make sure you understand it so that when you actually have to take a little quiz on it for real, that you actually know it. All right, so here comes that worksheet. I'll pause the video for a second while I hand that out. You are encouraged to ask me questions about this. And I also want you to get to know the kid next to you a little bit. So I'm going to ask just for this. These two rows, you have a natural partner right across from you. And I want you to just, in a minute when I say to you, just introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Effie, and I am into, like, what's your thing? I'm into dance, or whatever it is that you're into, okay? You have to pick something that you like to do. Maybe it's just you like to read. Maybe you're an Elden Ring player. Maybe you, I don't know, maybe you're going to be a doctor someday. I want to be a doctor someday. Whatever you want to tell this person, tell them one thing about yourself, okay? These two rows, talk to that person. Just to get to know them a little bit. These two rows, talk to that person. This last row. Now you have two people. After needs to talk to somebody else, so tell her your name and stuff. So, in a minute, I'm going to ask a few of you to introduce me to that person, just like, oh, his name is this, and he likes that. Okay, so I know that raises your level of concern, so you may want to ask them again, what's one thing that I can say about you, okay? Make sure you got their name and one thing that they're into. Maybe it's basketball, maybe they're into art. Pausing for a second. Okay, so let's start up in the front row here. Sir, who is that?
Jaden.
All right.
She plays hockey.
Jaden is a hockey player. Awesome. I'm going to just pick a few random people. Did you work with like the group of, or no, you worked with that kid? Okay, what's his name?
Oh, his name is Tate, and we actually had the thing in common, which is we both like to ski.
Both ski?
Yeah.
Awesome. I have a season pass at Welsh, so I like to ski too. All right, cool. Who did you meet? That guy?
This is Dylan, he likes to ski.
Also a skier.
Yeah.
Dang, how many of you guys are skiers in here? We have 3 all in a little pocket. Come on over here. Awesome. Okay, so I hope you just know them a little bit. And now I'm going to ask you to, on your scratch paper, your digital scratch paper there, everybody try this one. If I give you the number 70, do you know how to prime factor it? Typically only one of the two people does. So I want you to prime factor it, and if you're like, yeah, I have no idea, then turn and talk to the person, and either you both know how to do it, or maybe one of you can show the other one. Take a second, prime factor this, if you know what that is, and then talk to them about it.
Oh,
So, did you guys figure it out? What was the answer?
5, 2, 7.
5, 2, and 7. All right, so here's how I would have done it. I would have split this up into 7 times 10, and that's a good start, but why isn't it done? Because that's not prime. So you got to keep going. 2 and 5 and 7 are its prime factors. It's kind of cool to me that every number that exists that is a whole number is either prime itself or it is made up of primes. Didn't get enough worksheets?
Yeah.
All right, hand that back. All right, so that is called prime factorization, and that was what the number one question I got last hour on this sheet was like, what the heck is prime factorization? Now you know. Take your hand back. All right, I know there's going to be others. The question that I don't know is whether or not you're going to be brave enough to ask me when you're stuck. You're like, I don't remember this. Will you ask? Will you flip it to the back side, which is totally okay. That's not cheating. And look and like try to learn from that? Or you just sit there stumped? I hope with the answers being provided in the back that even if you're super shy, you have a way to get help. And you should be able to finish this and have it back by tomorrow. Seems kind of wimpy to give you all the answers, but really for the kids that really care, it's so handy to know if you're doing it right. Sometimes like on number 12, for example, you don't even know what you're supposed to do. You're like, what are you supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to put the ums together, and you're supposed to put the whole numbers together, and then your answer is like 25m to the 5th y squared, that kind of thing. All right, so if you're not even sure what they want, well, you can look at the backside and go, oh, you're just putting them all together. Okay. All right, so this is the part where, this is your first homework. If you can't do anything, there's a video for each one of them too. I know there's an answer key on the back. There's also a video. I opened it up on Schoology. If you click the link to Basic 20, each of those little things in the brackets, that's a video. And the video is 2 minutes long, and it would show you how to do it. I made this. It took a long time. I had to make 202 little videos to encompass all the basic skills that you're supposed to know. This is 20 of them. So I made a ton of videos to make this possible, to make it easy to get help at home. And now I'm going to walk around and get to know some of you. And that's all I have for the video for today.